Hello, and welcome to this week's installment of Washington Post Story Mode, the show where we discuss the biggest video game news of the week. I'm Washington Post reporter Nathan Grayson, and I am joined by my fellow Washington Post reporter Shannon Liao.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our stream. It's so good to be back here after, I don't know, weeks of traveling and then, recovering from COVID.
Weeks of traveling and travails.
Yeah. So it's been a while, but excited to get back to it.
Yeah, just to update everybody, we went to GDC and then we both got COVID because conventions are maybe not a great thing to do yet in light of the pandemic situation.
Yeah, honestly, still can't, I got some emails from sources saying okay, so who gave you COVID, or where did you get it at GDC? And it's so hard to say. I think
Yeah.
it's just it could have been anyone at this
Mm-hmm.
point. So yeah, we're kind of still pretty risky to go to those events.
Yeah, that's a funny question though. Like, hey, who gave you COVID? Tell me. As if
Yeah.
everybody just knows exactly who gave it to them.
Yeah, but I feel like it's the kind of mystery of I mean, when I went to South by and somebody else got COVID and they told me and I was like, oh, who'd you get it from? I feel like you're just wondering, even if nobody can answer that question.
Right. You're like idly wondering, like, was it that person who sneezed near me, or was it this person who blew their nose one time? Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but yeah, people ask me and I obviously don't know. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're going to these events. I think there's more stuff coming up, and I think people were wondering about PAX East, and I've seen posts of people saying they don't want to go anymore, which I don't blame them for. So
Yeah, understandable. Well, anyway, today we are going to be talking about a bunch of different topics from this week. The first one being the New York Times article that ran yesterday about Elden Ring,
yeah,
which I think generated a lot of discourse. And I had to be sure about this because initially I was like, wait, is this discourse only within kind of the press sphere? Because I know that sometimes it can feel like when there's a big topic amongst the press, if you're in that part of Twitter, then you think everybody's talking about it. But in reality, it's just some people who are in journalism. They're like, I have opinions about this. But no, I was just like looking around and I was like, yeah, it managed to get outside of that bubble. Like, I mean, this is a one that's close to me, but like, people on like Twitch, Twitter were talking about it. Um, so it was not super well received. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, just to like kind of give a synopsis of what it was about, the basic underlying idea that I think people took issue with is the New York Times more or less attributed the success of Elden Ring, which is a massively successful game. Still weeks after its release, wait, more than a month now after its release, the game that everybody's talking about. Um, but yeah, they basically said like that it would not have taken off in this way anytime pre-pandemic. That like the pandemic played a major role in people like deciding to give it a try and liking it.
Yeah,
Um,
the line was like, it's hard to imagine this game being successful in any other time. But people were like, well, From Software had been working on this for years and everyone was looking forward to this game and had like George R. R. Martin's name attached to it. So there was already so much hype for the game far before the pandemic. So that just seemed very like nearsighted for that columnist to write.
mhm. Yeah, it definitely did. Um, yeah, let's see. Started there. Oh, sorry. Seems like there were issues with chat or something. Um, Also reminding people they're living in a pandemic due to the success of the thing they enjoy is so exhausting as a reader. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too. Just like that, there's this thing that I think people have been enjoying regardless of the pandemic or without the pandemic really, impacting how they feel about it. And then like there's an article it's like this is actually about the pandemic too, and it's like yeah, that's just one of those things where after a while you're just like, if you're already being bombarded by the impacts of the pandemic, which everybody is, then you end up in this place of like, hey, this was my one piece of escapism and now we're back to kind of square one here. um, but yeah, so that was kind of the issue. And a lot of people, ended up talking about what actually led to Elden Ring's success, which I think is, unto itself a very interesting discussion. And our own Gene Park wrote a really good piece about this, about, like if you were in the know, which again, there's, I think, an important separation to be made between people who are like part of this sort of, the video game bubble, people who like follow this stuff every day and have their finger on the pulse and can see something like Elden Ring coming from a mile away, and everybody else who I think definitely, probably if they weren't blindsided by Elden Ring, they're at least like, what is this thing? We don't really understand it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, this was impossible to see coming. And so Gene's piece kind of like charts how the series has managed to, or how Elden Ring has managed to evolve from the Dark Souls series into this massive thing, mainly by staying the course, by remaining true to kind of a central design philosophy that is in many ways more unforgiving than a lot of other video games.
Yeah, I would just say that the New York Times like opened itself up to be dunked on, and I think people really enjoy dunking on it.
Hmm.
Like coming from like the perspective of the columnist like Brian Chen writing that story, like I can imagine that, pitching it to his editors, they're probably like, "What is Elden Ring?" And then he's like, well, in the midst of this pandemic, I can kind of take that trend of what's happening in the world and then also reflect on how this game is so hard. And then, his editors are probably like, "Oh, sure, go for it." It's like that's what happens when you're on a team of non-gamers and
Hmm.
none of the editors really understand it, but also like they have to speak to that broad audience of other people who also have never heard of this game before.
Right. When it also, I think, like the reaction here, and it's not like an incorrect reaction, but like there's the issue of kind of people feeling like legacy media, and that can in some cases include the Washington Post, has kind of is out of touch or can be out of touch. And so like what you get here is both a specific instance where that appears true, and also kind of people feeling free to express a broader sentiment that they feel more generally, and being able to express it in a way where like they can speak knowledgeably about that subject, which again is why I think I this is why I pulled that Hassan tweet, because like he's not necessarily like he's not really like a diehard gamer Twitch streamer, but even then he's like, this is what happens when a multi-billion-dollar industry like gaming doesn't get the same kind of dedicated writing staff that other arts do at the paper of record. um
Mhm.
which is I think that's something that a lot of people feel, and also it's something they feel about like not just video games but also other more current topics like Some publications are doing like digital culture and things like that better than others. Even like some that seem to have done it well, like New York Times. Talking to people like Taylor Lorenz, she suggests that it was still an uphill struggle while working there and doing great work there to get that work out there. So it's not just like about hiring people, it's also about facilitating their ability to even do that good work, giving them time to understand the subject, to play games, to, be in touch with the culture, as opposed to just, saying, oh, yeah, if you have like a take on the latest video game thing, you can churn that out really quick and just toss it on the site.
Yeah, I mean, this tweet reminds me of like, I just imagine if like there was a latest ballet or something, like an opera
Mhm.
song, and then New York Times comes out with an article saying like Swan Lake rendition can only come out in the pandemic and it can only be this successful. Then I don't like, what people's reaction would be at that point. Like, wait, this is a 100-year-old story. I mean, it's been around. Yeah, just imagine like that sounds kind of ridiculous. But
Yeah,
yeah.
wait. What's the hot new Swan Lake rendition? I just got to know.
Yeah, I don't follow that world, but I'm sure there are dedicated critics at the New York Times for that, so you can
Mhm.
easily figure that out. But like, just imagine they don't have to explain what ballet is, unlike
Right, right.
having to explain what esports are or a video game. I remember when I was working at CNN, I think I got a message on like the day of Last of Us Part Two coming out, and then
Mhm.
like somebody on like the cable side of things was messaging me saying like, are we covering this? And then I was like, I thought we don't care. I thought we were not covering it. So I guess you want me to suddenly. And so there was this like sense of like, okay, this game is trending, so let's just like parachute in and try to cover it, even if maybe we could have contacted them months ago, gotten access then, and then like tried
Hmm.
to understand what this franchise even is, or like who worked on it for all these
Right.
months. Instead, it's like, okay, well, it's now trending, so let's jump
Mhm.
in now. And I think that's what happened with Elden Ring.
Yeah. I mean, this also gets back to like a bigger problem within journalism, which is that, uh, journalism is frequently understaffed and underpaid. And
Yeah.
like, ideally you'd have more people handling this. And also those people would be given more time and money to do the things that they're doing. Cause like you have the whole idea of parachuting in on a trend. And it's like, well, if you just had more people following these things, then you wouldn't need to parachute in. I mean, it's a matter of, manpower and money, which is regrettable.
Yeah, I think it's also just like priorities. I
Mhm.
think if a company can value video games enough, then they would put the resources towards that.
Yeah. Could you
And
could you name one that has done that maybe in kind of more recent times?
yeah, like I think there's only like one legacy media outlet with like a very like a sizable video game team, and you're looking
Yeah.
at it right here.
Oh my God. I was about to ask, like, are the people on that team like very cool and attractive and like great at everything they do? I,
uh
I feel like I feel like they might be. We need to like get them on the show and interview them about that, obviously.
yeah, I don't really know who they are, but yeah, maybe we can find them next week.
Yeah, no, they're also very mysterious. They have this aura of mystique that makes them even more cool than just like their regular coolness stat. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. We gotta get on that, but for now, I'm not sure who they are.
Yeah. I'm also not sure which publication it is. I have no idea.
It's funny that
There's
you
no way
have
to
that.
know.
It's funny you have that because I also seem to have like this weird box.
Oh yeah, no, you mean the small trash can. I love
No,
my small trash can.
no, it's just like a building, some sort of mini building.
Well, I keep my small trash in it, so.
I don't think anyone needed to see that.
Anyway, um, but yeah, so I mean, the other side of this, of course, is again that it's very interesting to think about how Elden Ring did get so popular, because I think in some ways, it's kind of not an inverse of what often happens with games that are pioneering, but it's sort of like the version where ultimately the game that came up with a cool idea gets to like have its moment, or the series. Because as Gene pointed out, you have, while Dark Souls maybe like didn't sell Call of Duty numbers initially, it still influenced tons of other video games. And so you have like, more recent entries in series like God of War and Assassin's Creed, basically just like aping tons of elements of Dark Souls. And then you have the whole genre of Souls like games. All these things that basically took Dark Souls ideas and iterated on them, and in many cases didn't do them as well. And so it's like, oh, well, in a lot of cases, like if that happened to an indie game, like an indie game comes out has all these great ideas. AAA games take them, make way more money off them. It's like, well, that's not really fair. But in this case, there is kind of like a full circle moment happening where Demon Souls and Dark Souls had these ideas. Other games took them, iterated on them, made more money. And now Elden Ring is out and it's the big game. It finally has achieved that kind of status that maybe the Dark Souls series always deserved.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I actually have been spending a lot of this week talking to Elden Ring gamers for another story coming up, and yeah, a lot of them have been saying like they, at first, especially people who were not familiar with the franchise, or like they had already previously tried Demon Souls and Dark Souls and didn't like them. They
Mhm.
said like Elden Ring had more flexibility; they can go in all these different directions, and like they never get stuck, and also they can keep being creative and even playing co-op and kind of like band together and take down the same bosses. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of like fun, creative ways to play with the game rather than a lot of like the more linear progression you see in the other games.
Right, rather than beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Also, Buckman said that I was oversharing, and I retort that one man's small trash is another man's small treasure.
Uh,
Anyway,
yeah. So who would that man be? Hmm.
probably a small man. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that this is all very interesting. Also, like the other part of it is that I think that Elden Ring is a product of the same ecosystem that produces a lot of hits in this day and age, and that's pretty much always social media. And
Hmm.
like Elden Ring just has this very between the fact that, and I wrote a piece about this a while back, about like the intrinsic comedy of Elden Ring. But I mean, it's very shareable precisely because everybody has their own unique stories and videos of them dying in hilarious ways, and that plays really well on pretty much any social media site you can think of. And so, like, I think that in addition to the normal Souls fans coming out and being like, "This is the best one yet," you also had a lot of people being like, you had a lot of word of mouth, kind of propelling the game forward, just because like it's fun to watch other people play and fail, or
Yeah.
succeed. It depends on the context. But yeah, so like it's this unique storm of elements that have allowed it to be successful. None of which really include the pandemic. Like, I mean, yes, social media got a boost from the pandemic, but that's kind of a tangential connection at best. Um,
I
yeah,
would also say like the pandemic storyline was like more common and made more sense like in early like middle 2020 with Animal Crossing, especially like that
right.
theme is like now synonymous with the pandemic. Like that music is like reminiscent of 2020 and like those dark quarantine days. So like it would make sense back then, but at this point, especially like across America, I see like a lot of stores or just like a lot of people getting back to their lives and like everything reopening and mask mandates being lifted. So at
Mhm.
this point, like to say that Elden Ring's success is due to the pandemic is like really late to that, even that like pandemic
Mm,
video games boom narrative.
right. Yeah, I mean, that part is interesting to me though, because I do wonder to what extent like a publication like the New York Times feels a need, or if there's pressure there to tie anything involving gaming, which can, at some publications, unfortunately, is still viewed as like a juvenile pursuit to, like major serious news, real world events, just to like make it fit the purview of the publication.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I think like I mean, just speaking from my experience at the CNN, like every game that I ever pitched covering, there had to be a news pack. There had to be a reason why it matters to like the world. And
Hmm.
so if it's like okay, a new Mario Golf. I mean, I wasn't at CNN anymore when that game came out, but like just imagine like Mario Golf. Um, the the
I
relevance
like
of
the
that.
idea of someone being like, Mario Golf is inspired by this crazy real world thing. It's called golf.
Yeah, yeah. Dad's Golf, Mario, like that. There's a reason to cover that immediately. But like Elden Ring, especially like I think like when I was writing about Death Stranding, nobody
Mhm.
understood Death Stranding. I think I wrote about like the trailer at Gamescom one
To be
year, and then
fair, I don't think anybody understands Death Stranding still.
yeah, no,
The
there's
the
like
only
a
person who truly understands it is Hideo Kojima.
yeah, no, but like I just wrote about like a dead baby, and that you have to like hold and then like communicate with, and then you're like maybe also looking at a mom who is like stuck in a room with a baby. And I wrote all this down, and I remember
Mhm,
like the editor, it was like an overnight editor. It was like kind of late in the day, and
mhm.
he was like, "What on earth have you written here? Like, it doesn't make any sense." And is this like worth writing about? Is this an article? Like, and just like questioning like the fundamentals of even like writing about Death Stranding. And I was like, wow, yeah, if that game is a tough sell, then most really weird games are all tough sells. And
Mhm.
it's just like if you have to justify the existence of everything you're covering, at that point it's very hard.
Right, right. Because that's like extra work unto itself. It's not just a matter of, writing the piece and filing it and having somebody, getting it on the site or whatever. It's also like going to battle for your idea, being
Yeah.
like, no, this is actually important. I'm going to explain to you why in exhaustive detail so that you finally understand it. And like, yeah, that takes time and work.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's one of these things where, like, I think to sum it all up, like on one hand, that piece was very easy to dunk on, for reasons that are in some ways valid. But at the same time, you've also got to keep in mind like the various pressures that are on people trying to do that work. Um, and, be at least a little bit sympathetic to the fact that they're doing their best. And sometimes that still results in something that doesn't quite nail it.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more sympathetic coming from like a similar place, and just like having written, I've read like Brian Chen's columns over the years, like over like
Mhm.
decades, and like they've always been pretty good, but just like maybe like some of the topics are quite obvious because the audience is not very tech savvy or they're trying to learn
Mm.
about tech. So like him writing about Elden Ring suddenly is like probably indicative of him just personally playing it in his spare time.
Right,
So like I yeah can understand that. But yeah,
right.
maybe like for your coverage, like when you're trying to read about games and you want like something knowledgeable from them from like these outlets, like
Mhm.
I would say like Microsoft Flight Simulator is one that like CNN covered like 5 times in different angles and got like a pilot, like a
Mhm.
real professional pilot to like also play the game. So like
Yeah,
there are certain like very mainstream video games that will be well covered by these sites, otherwise they can
right.
kind
Well,
of
then, yeah, what we
underlevel.
need to do is just get an actual undying knight who's fought many, many giant bosses to play Elden Ring and ask him, like, is this akin to your experience, dying and being reborn in pursuit of ultimately defeating enemies that are massively more powerful than
I think we can get like a hunter or like a bug exterminator to like play this
you?
game, and then they would like use their real life experience to destroy those bosses.
Yeah, and then if it's a bug exterminator, when they exterminate it, they can take the tiny corpse and put it in my small trash.
Uh, if you're gonna collect all the corpses, that's up to you. But I don't think the rest of us need to hear about that. Okay.
It's not collecting, it's just a temporary little bed. Anyway. Um, so, in other significantly more serious news, um, so yeah, basically, Bloomberg reported yesterday that it seems like California lawyer quits over allegation that Gavin Newsom meddled in the Activision case, um,
Hmm.
which seems like something that would be, if true, extremely explosive.
Yeah. So I got a lot of emails about this, but basically, yeah, the chief counsel Janet Whipper was terminated by the governor, and then yeah, now Melanie Proctor has also stepped down and like sent us a statement too. So
Mhm.
yeah, this is pretty much confirmed. But yeah, it's just another additional thing to think about in the whole case that goes on for a long time.
Yeah.
I think I know Politico and a couple other like politics sites have covered this too, because
Mhm.
it would be significant if the governor, actually, intervened and fired Whipper. Whipper was also like working on not only the Activision Blizzard case, but also like a case with Tesla. Um,
Mm.
so it's like worth, yeah, just like this is a ongoing developing story, but um, yeah, if it involves the governor as well, that makes the story much more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's also one of these things where, like, again, not to sort of beat a dead horse, but like I think the fact that like all of these major government entities would be involved in an explosive story about a video game company is still just like, if you think about this from the perspective of somebody from like any of us from like 3 or 4 years ago, we'd be like, whoa, that's wild. And now it's
Uh-huh.
just like, that's Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's because the California state has been so involved with not only this case but also the riot case, and then yeah, I don't know. I'm just not surprised by this because I've been covering this for weeks now, and then
Mhm.
or just like in the past few weeks, a lot of politicians have gotten involved in this case, and so yeah, and it's been going on since last July at the very least. So Yeah, just a lot of people, and I don't think it's gonna end here. Like, there's
Mhm.
gonna be even more coming up. Yeah, so it's just like worth monitoring.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where, yeah, you look at this report and like it is very, the language used is really something. Like the as we continue to win in state court, this interference increased, mimicking the interests of Activision's counsel. And of course, you have to keep in mind that people who are saying this also have their own priorities within all of this and within this case. Um, but still, like, you know, that's a big allegation. That's not just like small potatoes. Oh, someone did something minorly inconvenient to us. This is like, you know, governor of state interfering in case.
It is really interesting because the DFEH, California State
Hmm.
Department of Fair Housing and Employment, is just like l- spearheading all these campaigns against Activision Blizzard, and then before it had won the $100 million in the riot settlement for
Right.
sexual harassment too, and with it, and the DFEH also was like trying to intervene in that settlement that the Activision and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EOC, had been working on to like settle for $18 million. The
Hmm.
DFEH continuously intervened and dragged that process out from like it was going to be settled last September, and it took all the way until just like a few weeks ago, I think,
Hmm.
in March, to finally settle the case for $18 million. So like the terms of the agreement are almost the same as back in September, but just like the fact that it took that many months was because of the DFEH continuously intervening because they really wanted to take this entire case in their own hands
Hmm.
and ask Activision for an even larger settlement than 18 million.
Yeah.
So just like they've been so active already,
Hmm.
that but it does seem like they have a lot of opposition from these other groups, because the EOC and the DFEH like fought for months over this.
Hmm. Yeah, and so this also kind of feeds into a question from chat, which is that in light of everything you just said, um, do we? I mean, this would be speculation at this point, but do we know why they would want to interfere with the case?
The governor,
Yeah.
no idea. I mean, that's the part that is worth investigating.
Hmm.
Is just like why, um, yeah, because I mean, I don't really follow Governor Newsom
Hmm.
very closely, because I'm not in California either, but yeah, that has to be another question. I mean, we don't actually know like like how much he's been watching this case,
Hmm.
and like why would he do this? So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that will definitely be interesting to keep an eye on then. Um, yeah, I think in this particular case, yeah, spokesperson for the governor's office referred to Bloomberg request for comment to a spokesperson for the DFEH, who said they would not comment on personnel matters. DFEH will continue to vigorously enforce California's civil rights and fair housing laws, a spokesperson said. So that's what we got from them for the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would just say that this is like an active thing that we're still covering. So you
mhm.
should just like keep an eye out in the next 2 weeks. We'll find out more.
Yeah, stay tuned to not the New York Times for more information.
Wow. Wow. Just calling them out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see. Moving on to things that are a little bit more fun. Um, Kingdom Hearts 4. It is a thing, which is interesting to me because Kingdom Hearts feels so much like a relic of a very different time. And the fact that they continue after a, brief, like decades long hiatus between main series games, now they're just like pumping them out. That's kind of wild to me. But yeah, so New Kingdom Hearts, it looks like this. Let's watch this trailer. It's pretty short, so don't worry too much about it.
自分が望む結末ではなかったと絶望するのなら他の世界に退場すればいい。選択肢は無限にあるはずだ。
Oh man, freeze frame. Okay, I have to do one thing here, which is point out something that a million other people pointed out. This little bit right here, this kind of gray sort of thing on the ground. Everyone is pretty sure that's an AT-AT foot from Star Wars. So it's
Okay.
like a big Star Wars robot, meaning that this jungle area would be Endor from Star Wars.
Hmm.
because that's how Kingdom Hearts rolls. Anything that Disney has is fair game.
Right.
Yeah.
I like his hair.
Oh yeah.
It's
I mean,
pretty
Square
well
Enix has always been so good at hair. And look, we finally get to see Sora's real feet. A series first.
あなたはこの世界に来て7日間ずっと眠って
I
いたの
I haven't watched this trailer since yesterday when I watched our video producer John Elker made a big video analyzing this trailer and breaking it down. I know so much more about this trailer now than I did before.
死の
Like I know that the character talking right now is from a mobile game that like nobody played, and he's now in the main series, so that's going to be confusing. Dang.
Yeah, look, he's cool.
Yeah, I mean it looks really cool. To be clear, I think it looks pretty dope. There he is. Yeah, I mean, this bit right here is really neat. It's going to do a quick transition between. There we go, right into gameplay.
Like this would be really good on like the haptics or PS5.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Kingdom Hearts has always been a kind of PlayStation first series, so wouldn't surprise me if they utilize that.
Yeah, just because like you know having played Scarlet Nexus with a lot of telekinesis and like those kinds of monsters too, it would like look and feel really satisfying, I think.
だが一度退場すれば元の世界に戻れると思うな
There we go. Kingdom Hearts 4. What I love about this and the existence of it is like, you know, on one hand, those were like some cool visuals. Seems really interesting. But it's so wild to me that like in this era of like mass market, you know, Disney kind of lowest common denominator stuff, that then they also, in conjunction with Square Enix, have this series that is just impenetrable. That like, you know, I mean, I grew up playing these games and I could not tell you what's happening here. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean it seems like a new like story, right? So that would be
Except it doesn't. So John's video really dives into this. By the way, everyone, like I'm not just, you know, doing this for advertisement purposes. The video that we put on this very channel yesterday, that our video producer John did, is really, really good. It is super in depth and like goes into all the ways that this new game seems to tie back to directly to the events of Kingdom Hearts 3 and other Kingdom Hearts games. So it's a direct continuation,
Right.
or at least it seems like it is.
right. But it's like
Yeah.
new elements that you wouldn't like recognize. Is what I was trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so basically the setting that we saw is like less cartoony. It looks more realistic, and that is because it's a world called Quadratum, which is like, so there's an interview with the series creator, and he talked about how like, so from Sora's perspective, Sora's the main character. Quadratum is an underworld, a fictional world that is different from reality. But from the point of view of the inhabitants on the Quadratum side, the world of Quadratum is reality. In the world where Sora and the others, probably that's meant to be live. I think that's a typo. It's the other side, the fictional world. So that's really interesting, right? Because it suggests basically that Quadratum, given that that's like Shibuya in Japan, that Quadratum is the real world. It's our world. And so like this is maybe a canon where like within the Kingdom Hearts canon, Disney fiction exists. And like, you know, people live in our world and are into it. And then Sora and company cross over from like what is functionally the real Disney world into our world where Disney is like, you know, I
Mhm.
mean, for all of Kingdom Hearts confusing weirdness, that's fun. That's a cool conceit. I dig it.
Mhm. Yeah, it would be really cool to yeah, hear. I mean, I really appreciate like John's coverage of this.
Mhm.
Love to like hear him discuss it. It's like too bad that he's producing this
Yeah,
show.
it's a real shame. There's no way for us to hear him talk about it in any capacity Wait a
know
minute,
for
what's
fact
this?
is that Sora is not the Lost Master, despite the trailer taking place in a 7th realm world Sora is lost in. In Dream Drop Distance, Sora actually failed the tests necessary to become a master, so he can't be the lost one. Instead, I suspect this Lost Master is either the Master of Masters,
Who are you really? I'm a lost master.
or a new character who is one of the ancient masters partially referenced in Melody of Memory.
It was known that the ancient
Man, that guy's
masters
eyes
had
freak me
crossed
out.
over into another world.
So next in the trailer, we get these lines.
自分が望む結末ではなかったと絶望するのなら他の世界に退場すればいい。
Once again, the likely culprit is the Master of Masters. We see who's actually saying these lines towards the end of the trailer. It's one of these two hooded figures. Fans familiar with Kingdom Hearts' back cover and the mobile games will immediately assume this is the Master of Masters and another character named Luciu, and they're probably right. Long story short, the Master of Masters is an all-seeing prophetic character, and Luciu, who we eventually discover is actually Xigbar, a secondary antagonist in the series, was his underling. While we're
Kingdom
not
Hearts.
entirely sure of his identity yet, the Master of Masters has been the architect for almost every major plot point in the series. The Master of Masters even equipped Xehanort with all the tools he need to be the major antagonist of Kingdom Hearts' first arc. So it makes more sense that he and Luciu are the two robed figures here, and not just some new random characters.
Anyway, y'all can watch the rest of the video in your own time. It's very good and very detailed, and I promise you, by the end of the video, you will actually understand most of this stuff. But yeah, that's Kingdom Hearts, and again, it's just wild to me that it persists in a world that is, in kind of a culture that I think has taken these properties in a very different direction. Because Kingdom Hearts came out during a time when it was kind of like, you know, it was when Kingdom Hearts first came out, it was crazy that it existed for a different reason. Simply that it was like inconceivable or unprecedented that you would have all these different major media properties, especially Square, like Final Fantasy and Disney, coming together. And now we exist in a time where everything's a crossover. And this remains kind of the most just impenetrable crossover of them all. Like, you would think, given the way that things have kind of gone in recent times, that, you know, Disney especially would look at something like Kingdom Hearts and say, like, let's simplify it. Let's kind of, you know, take the series that has been overwhelming for a while and kind of, you know, hit the reset button and take things in a more accessible direction. Maybe reboot it entirely. And instead, Square Enix and Tetsuya Nomura are like, no, more ridiculous shit. You know how there were, or ridiculous stuff. You know how there were 6 like worlds in the previous games or 6 dimensions or something? Well, there's a 7th alternate dimension in addition to those 6. And you're going to be traversing those 6 and the 7th at the same time. And they're going to be characters with names like Xehanort, and I don't even remember all the other ones anymore. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I'm glad that something like this exists in a time of hyper cautious Disney sequels and hyper cautious AAA video games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a dedicated fan base that will sit here and like parse through all of this. Like, I think John has done a great job with the 13-minute video, but I feel
Mhm.
like there are a lot of people in this community who would just sit there and do the same thing, or like go on Reddit and like give you all the timestamps. So like that is not like wasted on them, and like I think that as long as they can follow along, it's gonna get
Mhm.
more complicated. They're not gonna back off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the other part of it too is that, I mean, I think that in some ways culture has also shifted in a direction that favors something like Kingdom Hearts. That, you know, we've seen a number of properties now have hyper complicated lore that people enjoy digging into. That becomes an appeal of whatever series it's attached to. I mean, like, even, you know, we were just talking about Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a game that tells tons of its story through lore, and a lot of it is really inaccessible and complicated, and you've got to watch YouTube videos and read through wikis and like comb over all these details outside of the game. But people enjoy doing that because it's collaborative, because they get to do it together, because like it's the sort of, you know, I guess, narrative puzzle that would be maybe even impossible to solve on their own, but it's this big communal experience. And, you know, you see that with tons of things that aren't just video games. I think that you see that with a lot of like TV series and comics and anime and manga and, you know, books. I mean, everything has lore now.
Yeah, yeah, it happened a lot with like Lost and Westworld, TV shows that like got more complicated season after season because
Mhm.
the people making them like also like realized, oh, there's a community following along with the clues, and they're making theories about what would happen. So we have to subvert their theories and make it
Mm.
like some kind of solution that's even more complicated that they couldn't have predicted, which made Westworld like much more convoluted and hard to follow after like season 3. So I mean, at that point, it's like only a select few people are able to follow along and willing to do that work at that point. But yeah, there's a lot of, and I personally really enjoy creating theories and over different properties too, and especially like after watching an anime, just like going into the manga with the additional details and the characters to then like know before the other fans of the actual anime what's going to happen next.
hmm Yeah, let's see. Brunt says, well, actually, first asked a question that I am interested in answering. As someone who knows nothing about the lore of this series, how long do people expect this game story to last? My answer, based on prior evidence, is forever. I mean, I think that people expected Kingdom Hearts 3 to kind of wind things down. It didn't. I think that because Kingdom Hearts story and canon is just so wonky and so full of spin-offs and weird details that come to matter much later, you can kind of just keep that going forever. It's just like, building a bridge as you walk across it. You're just like, yep, hammer another board on, another board, let's just keep going. So yeah, I mean, the downside of that is that eventually this metaphorical bridge becomes creaky and starts to break down. That has not hampered Kingdom Hearts yet. So, people are still on board now. I think they're just going to stay that way. And then
And
also,
also
let's see.
yeah, it's worth mentioning there's also like a massive fan fiction community for Kingdom Hearts. So even
Oh,
if
yeah.
the main story ends, I think people would keep it going like in their imaginations forever.
hmm Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I mean, it's tied to Disney. And like, if you want to look at a bunch of forever stories, that's like kind of, been Disney's thing for a long time, is they have this stable of characters that they just use and reuse and put all over everything. I mean, the downside of it is that Disney constantly lobbies to extend copyright so that none of their stuff enters public domain, most of all Mickey Mouse himself, which has, I think, I don't know how to say that word out loud. Anyway, it has bad impacts on creativity as a whole, but different discussion for a different day. And the other thing Brunt said is, yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake's messed up canon is something I'm heavily looking forward to digging into by the time of the next release. And yeah, just for those who don't know, Final Fantasy VII Remake is also a project headed up by Tetsuya Nomura, who is the creative director of the Kingdom Hearts series. And yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake takes some very interesting liberties with the story of Final Fantasy VII that I love. Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of my favorite games of 2020. That game absolutely is great, is way better than I think it had any right to be in a lot of ways. So without spoiling anything, I will say that I also am looking very forward to kind of digging into what's happening in that universe, because I think it is interesting lore and narrative developments paired with an actual message, which some of these things can kind of like, get away when you end up in this territory of like tons of lore and backstory. It's like, well, what are you trying to say with it? And a lot of series that I think have done that, for example, like Lost or something like that, kind of lose themselves in the process. They don't really like, it's like, what was Lost about? I don't know, a lot of stuff. But I think Final Fantasy VII Remake was kind of about being a remake and about fan expectations and about kind of allowing characters to exist beyond what people want them to be. And I thought that was cool. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm only halfway through the game. I think I got distracted by something else, but I remember doing some interviews with the developers, and I know they talked about how the game is about climate change and evolving technology. So I was like, oh, actually, this is like somewhat interesting. I think I maybe didn't manage to turn that into an article because of the constraints I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
But yeah, just I think that was like a game that had some sort of a vision attached.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then Brunt says it helps the Crisis Core is my first Final Fantasy game. Look, Crisis Core is underrated. I loved that game. Yeah, like I remember playing that on my PSP in my college dorm and being like, "Oh my god, this is so good," and the ending made me cry. Um, I used to be really into Final Fantasy stuff. That's why I know all of this. But yeah, so anyway, Kingdom Hearts 4 gonna be certainly an interesting one. We will see if that translates into it being a good game or another kind of mishmash of maybe too many ideas like Kingdom Hearts 3 was. Moving on to another game that is coming probably much sooner than Kingdom Hearts 4, which is hard to imagine because people have been waiting for this one for a while. Overwatch 2 is finally around the corner in a tangible form, that being a beta coming at the end of this month. And so, in service of that, Blizzard has been showing off Overwatch's first new character since 2019, I want to say, or maybe 2018. No, 2019. And that is Sojourn, who is, well, let's see. Let's go ahead and watch her story trailer to get an idea of who she is.
This meeting of the International Justice Commission is now called to order. Please state your name and call sign for the record.
Acting Commander Vivian Chase. Call sign Sojourn.
How did you come to join Overwatch?
My unit of the Canadian Special Forces teamed up with Overwatch during the Omnic crisis. Jack Morrison and I worked well together. And after the war, he reached out.
Can you give us some examples of duties you performed?
Whatever was needed. Sometimes I ran point for our agents in the field. Other times I commanded the operation. No matter what their mission was, mine was to bring every last one of them home.
It sounds like you hoped for the impossible.
I know, but they gave me the impossible every single day. It was the honor of a lifetime to have served with Overwatch. But you can love a thing with your whole heart and still know it's time to say goodbye.
What, is she talking about Blizzard?
Even the best journeys end. But a new one is right around the corner.
I mean, that's actually
You
what a
never
lot of
know
people say
where
when they're
that
leaving
road's gonna
Blizzard.
take you.
So I've heard a lot about this game being, too small, too short. It was supposed to be part of Overwatch. It's still incomplete.
Mhm.
Just like so many stories about how it's not going very well and
Mhm.
it's going to be delayed further. But yeah, I mean, from this trailer, I guess you can just see like one person's like backstory. I mean, from her name, immediately I was thinking like the historical figure, like Sojourner Truth. But yeah, do
Mhm.
you have another trailer?
Yeah, so they also today actually, not long before the stream began, Blizzard released a video of like how she's going to play, which I'm interested in checking out. But yeah, the what you said there is pretty interesting because yeah, like on one hand, Overwatch 2 has been in development for a while now, and like is definitely responsible for Overwatch 1 stagnating to the degree that like it lost a ton of players and basically like all of the hype surrounding it, because it was doing a live service model since its release in 2015, 2016, whichever of those years it actually came out, and putting out heroes pretty regularly, or at least every handful of months, for a while. And then as soon as the impression I get is Activision kind of was like, we need an Overwatch 2, resources shifted pretty hard in that direction, and Overwatch 1 just kind of you know lost a lot of its luster. So
Yeah, it was.
Sojourn, yeah.
Yeah, it was like multiple. It was a lot of pressure, right? It was like maintain the audience of Overwatch 1, try to grow it, and then also work on Overwatch 2, and at the same time work on Overwatch League,
Hmm.
which is not, very, it's not doing very well in like views
Hmm.
compared to other esports.
Right. Yeah. And so like it's interesting to hear all of that. And then also like again, people have been waiting for Overwatch 2 for so long. And so to hear that it's still in a state of like, you know, to hear that it's still not that maybe not as close to being done as people would like it to be is, I think a pretty sobering thing to hear. But it's also like it makes sense given what you were just saying, that there were all these pressures from on high to maintain the first game, make the second game, and build out a whole esports league. And putting that much pressure on any development team is going to result in things breaking down somewhere, or maybe everywhere, as it seems to be in the case of Overwatch. And then on top of that, you also have everything happening at Activision Blizzard right now. And it's like, yeah, is that I get the impression that is not a good environment in which to make a video game.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that Bobby Kotick did an interview with, I think it was GamesBeat,
Mhm.
part of Venture Beat, I think. And then he was like, oh, one of the reasons why he sold Activision to Microsoft, and why
Hmm.
Microsoft is in the process of buying Activision Blizzard, is because of the delays of Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2,
Hmm.
which then people on Twitter, especially people who were working at Activision Blizzard at the time, were upset over that because it seemed to like be shifting the blame towards the game developers rather than cultural problems of the company
Hmm.
or other underlying leadership issues.
Right. Right. And that's one of the things where it's like, which of these is more likely that all the game developers just like suddenly stop being great at their jobs even after being hired because they were world-class developers because that's the only way you get a job at Blizzard? Or is it because a bunch of extenuating circumstances involving their company and all the pressures put on them caused them to not be able to do the thing they can normally do better than pretty much anyone in the world?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like,
Um,
which came first, chicken or the egg?
yeah. In any case, yeah. So now we're in a situation where let's see. Kind of miss Overwatch, but I don't really play competitive PvP that much anymore. Yeah, I feel the same way. I used to be a big time Overwatch player. Like I played it every evening for a long time. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of the thing where I think that, and this was sort of the other side of Overwatch's problem, is that I think especially like Overwatch was made to be a forever game, but I feel like the core gameplay loop does run dry quicker than maybe even other competitive PvP games. It just like there's just something about it where after a while it gets kind of like repetitive and frustrating. Like it
Yeah,
starts out being really fun and feeling really good, but when you like kind of hit that point where you're like pretty good at the game and you're playing regularly, I think that I probably spent like I would say 60 to 70% of the time frustrated and only 30 to 40% of the time having fun. And like it's not a super good ratio.
yeah. I think anecdotally, I've seen a lot of people move on from Overwatch to play Valorant, which
Mhm.
like has been compared to Overwatch, and like even the Riot developers of Valorant have said like they were trying to make a game that is similar
Mhm.
to Overwatch and CS:GO,
Mhm.
or and so yeah, like just like because Valorant and Overwatch both have like very diverse characters and like cool backstories and this like stylistic aesthetic that
Mhm.
motivates people to keep playing these games. And then Valorant has just like a slicker look, and honestly has been more popular in recent time as
Oh
far as
yeah,
I've
way
seen.
more
So
popular.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also just goes to show like, we live in a time right now when all these companies are trying to adopt a live service model. And like, me and Sony bought Bungie over it because they wanted more kind of muscle on the development side in terms of just like know-how. And, because like live service is a really hard thing to do. And I think that the difference between Overwatch and Valorant kind of demonstrates that. Because like, you know, I think that Valorant's clearly a good game, but the other part of it is that Riot is maybe more so than any other company out there, masters of running a live service game. I mean, they kind of invented the idea of it, or at least they were one of the many companies that sort of pioneered it. And so like they had all that experience coming off League of Legends, and they've just, they've done a really good job of continually updating the game and like making sure remains balanced. And then also like I Overwatch kind of haphazardly dove into esports. They're just like, yeah, if we just throw enough money at it, it's going to happen for us. It'll be huge. And Riot was like, okay, what we're going to do is like let a grassroots scene form and then put some money into tournaments run by people within that grassroots scene as opposed to putting them on ourselves initially. And then after about a year, we'll start hosting our own stuff and then we'll build that out. And like, they did it all very deliberately and methodically in a way where like, I think Blizzard just sort of thought they could do it because they were Blizzard.
Yeah, that's true. I know, like when Riot was launching all those games at the same time, I like a common question I kept asking them was like, "Are you gonna do any esports for this?" And
Mhm.
they were always like, "Oh, maybe we'll see what the fans want." Um, and then I've also heard, internally, like working on these games, that they're just looking for player feedback, and then they will change anything in the game to
Mhm.
accommodate that. Whereas like at Blizzard, there's more of a vision of like what
You
is
mean it, Riot?
making the game. No, at Blizzard,
Oh,
making a
okay.
game is like more about like what is fun among like
Mm.
all these developers, and like what is a cool like magical vision we can execute here. But like at Riot, it's more of like
Oh, yeah.
the
Hearing
community
player
wants
feedback.
these things, and the community is very angry, and now we gotta change to accommodate them.
Yeah, which I mean, both of these styles of development are valid to a degree. I mean, I think that you can, err too far in the direction of being like, we got to respond to all player feedback because, players aren't always right, is the thing. I mean, players can think they want something and that thing can turn out to be heinously unfun for like 90% of the player base. So, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
matter of balancing player feedback with like, no, we have a coherent vision. We want to stick to it. I mean, again, I think that's what Riot has done really well. And that Blizzard, again, with Overwatch, kind of like failed to do is when they started listening to player feedback, they started making a lot of decisions that I think were like very esports oriented and very geared around like the diehard players at the cost of some of the more casual appeal of the game.
Yeah, you just reminded me. There was a mode in League that like some players liked, and then it was also
Mhm.
like extremely toxic. It was like a mode where you can choose your enemy's champion and like force them to play something, and like that it was so bad that they have like taken it out, and they said they would never do it again because it was just like triggering everyone to be so angry with each other and being extremely toxic. So yeah, that's like another example as you're talking. I was like, yeah, that actually did happen.
Yeah. With all that said, let's give a quick watch to the gameplay trailer just to see like 'cause I haven't watched this yet. I'm curious to see how Sojourn plays. I think people have been wondering about this for a long time. So yeah, let's take a quick look.
The world could always use more heroes. If only it were that easy. After all, heroes aren't born. They're made. Attack with me! Not on my watch.
I cannot be stopped.
Canadian hospitality.
Enemy forces incoming. Clear a path.
Sojourn, engaging. Coming through. Ha! Disrupting. Breaking them down. Nice work, team. Keep it moving. We're playing by my rules. Railgun powered and ready to fire. Now or never. Never tell me the odds. I already know them.
So I don't actually play Overwatch, despite having
Mhm.
this spare. But I think that a lot of that gameplay trailer was not actually gameplay. It was like cutscenes, right?
I mean, sort of. Like I think that was mostly gameplay, but I mean, it was like with a pulled out camera and it was very like cinematically done.
Mhm.
But I mean, in engine, like using her actual those are the animations for her actual abilities. Um,
Right.
but yeah, no, she seems like so she seems very much like a character with a lot of mobility who's made for flanking. And yeah, actually, quickly, if our video producer's looking, video playback is kind of scuffed. And yeah, I've noticed that too. I've got the stream open on another window, and it seems like video playback is lagging pretty badly for some reason. So if we could get somebody to see what's going on, that'd be cool. But anyway, yeah. So she seems like she's really built for like for flanking and mobility. Because like in pretty much all those scenes, she was getting around the enemy shield and deploying abilities to either disrupt what the other team was doing or to just like her ult looks like it's just straight damage into like their back line. Which means yeah, she seems like she's pretty interesting. I wonder if Blizzard like dropped a blog where they talked more about each ability. I'm not sure. They don't seem to have a link to it. But in any case, yeah, I mean, she looks like a cool hero. Albeit, I saw some people online talking about how like apparently she's going to be another character who like rewards really good aim and stuff like that. So again, kind of like catering to the hardcores.
Mhm.
We'll see about that. But the other notable thing about her is that she is the first Black woman hero in Overwatch history, and that's pretty notable because the game has quite a few heroes at this point, and prides itself on having a diverse cast. But it had a hamster before it had a Black woman.
That is such a contrast to like Apex Legends, for
Mhm.
instance.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think that Apex Legends and Valorant both learned a lot from the mistakes of Overwatch in terms of building out their casts. I think that they both were watching pretty keenly when stuff like this happened. This is a throwback from
Oh, hey, you
some
wrote
guy
that.
named Nathan Grayson. Gross. But yeah, I mean, like in the wake of the announcement of Overwatch's previous hero, Ash, or no, not previous, second to most recent. Um, there were a lot of questions online about why there's yet another skinny white woman in the game. Yeah, there was a lot of like people were tweeting about how, you know, because the other thing is Sojourn has been around for a while as part of the lore. And people are like, when are we finally just gonna get her in the game? Yeah.
That is like what happened in League 2, where they added Senna, who's like
Mhm.
Thresh's wife, but she's like dead in the lore, and
Mhm.
she had been dead. Well, not Thresh. Sorry, Lucian's wife, and like had been dead and been killed by Thresh many years ago, but like never appeared in the game until recently,
Mhm.
and also has a large gun.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like it took until the sequel to Overwatch for there to finally be a black woman hero in the game. But it seems like Blizzard is, trying to be like cognizant and aware of that. Like the stream announcing all of this stuff. This was the developer stream. They included multiple members of the community who are black, and then also art director. Yeah. Um, so much more
Yeah.
diverse than the typical, because like for all of the diversity within Overwatch 2's cast, like the development team is a lot of generally white dads. So yeah, I mean it's good to see them at least trying in this regard. It's always the sort of thing where how much does that effort translate into something sustained that actually results in, I guess, Blizzard or any video game company doing better.
I
And
mean, it's
oh, go ahead.
interesting that you bring this up now, like, because the company also just hired the chief diversity officer
Mhm.
as well, like Katie, I think, and it's like the first time they've had one.
Mhm.
So that's also notable.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, I mean, and of course they would, given everything else that's been happening at Blizzard recently, yeah, it's probably long overdue. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, we'll see, because it's also the sort of thing where, keep in mind that Blizzard was trying really hard to sort of pivot into being like a company that at least espoused the virtues of diversity within games like Overwatch, and yet still beneath the surface, all of the things involving, sexual harassment and discrimination and everything else that's been alleged against them, those things were happening. So, you know,
Yeah.
there are
Yeah. I mean,
layers to anything like this.
yeah. I mean, part of the $18 million settlement they just signed with the EEOC is that they have to be monitored over like diversity initiatives, and
Hmm.
also like the kinds of like harassment training that they are um, giving employees. And yeah, there's going to be a third party to like monitor this company over the next 3 years. So we'll definitely see like on multiple fronts whether there's improvement or not.
Mhm. Yeah. So that will definitely be something to keep track of. And then also just like, beyond that, what's going to happen with Overwatch 2? Because as you said, and like I think that also evidence bears this out. Overwatch 2 is not done. That's why what's coming out soon is a multiplayer beta. They have broken up the multiplayer and single player elements of the game. It really seemed like when they first debuted Overwatch 2 that the kind of like not single player, sorry, PvE as opposed to PvP. So basically modes where you team up with other players to take on NPCs as opposed to additional other players. But it really seemed like that part was going to be the thing that differentiated Overwatch 2 from Overwatch 1. And now instead we're in a situation where Overwatch 2's PvP is going to be the first thing to launch. And I mean, new modes aside, it looks like Overwatch 1. And so it's like, what's going on there? What are we going to get when we finally get the complete experience of Overwatch 2? When we finally get that experience, will people still be around for it? Or will they be like, eh, we already waited for Overwatch 2 to come out in some capacity. It was kind of underwhelming. Now we're done with the series.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I mean, right now these days when I hear about Overwatch, it's like people cosplaying as Diva, and it's
Mhm.
still not like it's no longer just as trendy or fun to like have a bunch of people hop into a game. Um, so yeah, we'll see if it holds up in the coming
Mhm.
months.
Yeah, I do have to point to the intense cognitive dissonance of us having this conversation while in Diva chairs, but whatever.
I bought this chair because it's pink, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I bought it because I considered myself back then to be a lapsed Overwatch player as opposed to like someone who's probably done playing them aside from for coverage for coverage reasons, which I'm gonna play Overwatch 2 because like it's part of my job.
After this chair came out, after I bought this chair, a lot of other chairs came out that I was like, oh no, I should have bought
Oh,
those
you want
chairs.
those more?
And it's too late because like to set this up and like buy it and wait for it to ship out in 8 weeks is like not worth it. So
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
why. That's
yeah.
all I'll say. But like there are a bunch of new chairs now that would
Mhm.
apply more to like my gaming interests, but it's
I
it's
mean,
too late.
also, yeah, you got to break in chairs, right? It's not just like getting a chair and building it. It's also sitting in it for like 3 months until it's finally comfortable for you.
Oh, I don't know. I think mine was already comfortable from the first day. So I don't know
I
what's
mean,
going on with your chair. You have to bring it
no,
in
I mean,
in 3
not
months.
not comfortable necessarily, but like, you know, until it feels just right. I don't know. I think the chairs like takes a little time.
Maybe it was the way
They,
that you built your chair.
wow. Okay, you're gonna call into question my chair building abilities.
Yeah,
I
I'm just saying my chair was already comfortable.
Wow, if you want to like challenge me on that, come over here and I'll build a chair right in front of your eyes. We can have a
Uh,
chair off. I'll build the best darn chair you ever saw. It'll have between 2 and 6 legs. It'll have like a really tall back. Um, it might be just like the throne from Game of Thrones. I don't know.
Made out of swords, yeah. Wow. I
Yeah.
don't I mean if people want to see that, put that in the comments. Otherwise, I'm good.
um, but yeah. So anyway, that's Overwatch. Moving on to sort of some small. Actually, I'm going to move on to one that's related because it's I think kind of indicative of maybe some of the things we were talking about. So this week, it was announced that. Sorry, this page is not loading well. Give me a quick moment. My computer is, I think, having a lot of issues today. My computer might also be the culprit on videos playing poorly. They're playing fine on my end, but you never know. Anyway, so yeah, suspended Valorant pro Sinatraa announces return to competition. This is Overwatch relevant because he used to be a professional Overwatch player before switching over to Valorant. He was one of the biggest stars in the Overwatch League. And he was suspended from Valorant or from his Valorant team for 6 months because of sexual assault allegations and failure to cooperate with the resulting investigation.
Mhm.
So, this is one of those things where that all sounds pretty, pretty sketch, at least in regards to, making a comeback already after something that serious.
Yeah, we've covered this too at the post.
Mhm.
Especially when the initial scandal broke out.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Sorry. I
Yeah,
should have
this is
advertised for
before
us better.
it's before your time. So.
Oh, wow. I keep forgetting that I'm a small baby. I'm a youth.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
oh, you don't. I guess it's not linked in this article, probably.
Yeah, no, probably not. I mean, I can pull it up really
I
quick.
think Mikhail wrote the original.
Oh yeah.
It might have
Here,
been Mikhail.
pop
It was
over
Mikhail or
here.
Teddy. Maybe Mikhail.
Washington Post. Valorant,
Sinatraa.
Sinatraa. Yeah,
Yeah.
that should be enough.
Yeah,
There we
there you
go.
go. There
Yep.
you go. March 10th last
Yeah.
year.
So a little bit more than a year ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was suspended from his team, but he is coming back. Yeah. He said on Twitter, "It's been a year since I was forced to step back from competitive play. In that time, I have learned a lot about myself and grown as a person. I am now ready for a return to competitive play and will be starting tryouts this week." And so, yeah, this comes a year after Sinatra's ex-girlfriend accused him of sexual assault. His ex, who was in a 9-month relationship with Sinatraa, shared harrowing details of his abusive behavior, including an audio file in which Sinatraa continued to have sex with her despite her audibly saying no multiple times. Oh yeah, a little late for this, but content warning. Yeah, the Sentinel suspended Sinatraa after the news broke in March 2021. Riot Games also got involved 2 months later, pursuing its own investigation and ultimately handing Sinatraa a 6-month suspension for failing to fully cooperate. At the time, Sinatra's ex said she didn't drop any charges against Sinatraa. It's unclear where things stand now, as any social media account tied to her has disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. And so then this is the part where we get into like, on one hand, you have this game like Valorant with a diverse cast. But then on the other hand, you have the culture surrounding it. And so, yeah, despite the serious accusation, the announcement of Sinatra's return was met with tons of praise from folks like NRG pro streamers, celebrated his comeback. Yeah, that said, not everyone was stoked about Sinatraa showing his face again in the competitive scene, particularly with allegations still hovering over him.
Yeah. I think if he's allowed back in the scene, that's like, it will probably raise questions for everyone around the companies allowing him to do that and then the teams. But yeah, That's also worth noting that a lot of the Overwatch pros, and also like other games, pros like switched over to Valorant
Oh
when
yeah,
that game came out.
yeah. No, the Overwatch kind of dying on the vine to Valorant pipeline is quite a thing. But yeah, no. So I mean, yeah, it's just like kind of again, it feels like to me one of the products of like a culture like this. And the other part of it is that, I mean, 6 month suspension for some pretty serious allegations and then failing to like cooperate with an investigation around them. Like, is that like what does that do necessarily? 6 months is, a while. I mean, that is a fair amount of income. But like if it means that ultimately somebody who did something that serious, or at least is accused of having done something that serious, is able to once again be part of that scene where they did things like that to begin with, like, is that enough?
Yeah, I think it has to do with, what did they find in that investigation? Was it like a failed investigation?
Mhm.
And just like I don't know if like this um was serious enough to become like a criminal investigation, or if it just stayed within like Riot
Mhm.
and the companies, and they just couldn't figure it out, So like those are the
Yeah.
questions to see if like this is serious enough that the people that who are still supporting him and his fans are not taking it as seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. And like it's interesting to me to like not interesting, it's kind of, I think it is a sign of the times that on one hand, we are seeing more people kind of, come out and talk about instances of abuse and harassment than ever. But we are also seeing more people, maybe not than ever, because, this is hard to say, but we're seeing a lot of people who are fans of those being accused grow increasingly willing to just be like, I guess we don't care about that, um, which is not great. And I think speaks to like, again, one of the many ways that the internet can break people's brains. I think if you get saturated enough with something that's really serious, you just come to expect it or to accept it. And then also, I think that, you know, parasocial relationships are a heck of a drug, and people are willing to defend a lot when they view somebody as like a central figure in their lives and like someone who, even though they're not actually friends, someone who feels like a friend.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot. This has come up a lot of times with people defending someone they don't know, being like, "Oh, I think from the video he looks like a nice guy, so
Hmm.
why cancel him? Why take him out?" Um, and then other people being like, you're just like a stranger to him. Like, why do you, based on a video, think you know him?" Um,
Right, right.
but yeah, I mean, it's this situation is still like again like just came out and like
Hmm.
probably like has
Yeah,
so many
still developing.
questions that it's really hard to say like who is wrong here until we know more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Man, less than or more than 100K likes on his return tweet is wild to see. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
sure is.
But then the
Right.
replies are the replies like, "Hey, congrats, man," or like, "Why are you coming back?"
I mean, I think that it's probably a mixture. So, I mean, clearly there's some welcome back and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, as the article said, I think there's some people being like, "Yeah, hooray, he's back," and others being like, this is weird."
oh, what's the outcome of those allegations? I don't know if anyone replied to him, but like,
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think anybody is. Most people
yeah,
agreed that he's clear. Wow, this is messed up. This is a horrible reply.
yeah,
Started in OnlyFans. No, no, a million times. Absolutely not. This is a horrible response. Ugh,
yeah,
people suck. Um, anyway, I guess speaking of Riot, well, actually, this is kind of a 1-2 punch. The more notable thing is that this week Bungie announced in
mhm,
kind of I think a twist compared to what everyone else is doing. A lot of companies right now are being like, all right, it's time to return to work. For example, Riot, who we were just talking about. Riot Games tells workers to return to office without vaccine or mask requirements, mirroring what Blizzard did and then undid, which
yeah,
led to another walkout and all sorts of stuff recently.
mhm,
Um, Comparatively, Bungie is going digital first. And so they're saying that more current and future roles will be fully remote eligible in currently only a small handful of states, but they're going to widen that soon. The reason they can't like launch with every state included is because of tax stuff. They have to become tax active in every state for that to work. So they're only doing this right now in the places where they are currently able to process like the tax side of things. But in time, I think they hope to encompass the country. In any case, yeah, they're basically saying like, yeah, roles that we're hiring for right now, if you know, digital is like the first option. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion at these companies now as people are returning to work, like which ones are going to stay digital first. And I see a lot of like game developers saying they would rather just work from home. And then at the same time, there's the discussion of just like unionization and if they go to the office, like what's protecting them from COVID. And then also like the 4-day work week. A lot of like studios are implementing that too.
Right, right.
And just like taking Friday off. So just like there was this discussion at GDC and at DICE of like when people come back to work, how we're going to re-envision it and make it better, because for the first time ever, everyone was like sent home for 2 years. And then there was finally some room to reconsider the ways that we do work together and kind of like throw out old practices that are not working. And then on the flip side, you see companies like Riot and Blizzard being like, well, we can just go back to normal, right?
Right.
Which, yeah, some people are not happy about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are not happy with that. Yeah, speaking of, Braun says, as someone who's playing Destiny right now, there's no end to Bungie employees replying to other game devs on Twitter to apply to Bungie when they express dismay at returning to work without a mask mandate. Yeah. And then Buckman said, can we talk about how hard Bungie's recruiting right now? I mean, yeah, that makes sense because Sony just bought them, and Sony is trying really hard to staff them up. I think that was always part of the plan, even going in. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see companies recruiting really hard and like that kind of like competitive market for jobs and for labor that's going on right now. Like it's not it's like somebody looking for a job is actually like in a more advantageous position right now because they have all of these different companies recruiting them, whereas before it was like maybe like very, very difficult to get a job at like Apple or Google or like the top tech companies, but now they're all like trying to compete and give the best packages to people because there's just not enough labor.
Yeah. And I mean, especially in the case of games, going back to what we were talking about earlier with live service games, I mean, Sony specifically bought Bungie because they want to really go hard on live service. And that's a really specialized skill set. And there just aren't that many game developers who are like experts in it. And so all these companies now are trying to staff up in terms of like, especially specialized talent, senior level talent. And in order to do that, they have to offer them incentives so as to say like, hey, yeah, you have your pick of the litter right now, but you should work for us specifically. We'll give you not just like a job working on a cool game, but also like the best amenities and benefits. We'll give you the most flexibility. We will make you, feel the most valued.
Yeah, and they have to make their salaries competitive with like the tech industry now at this point, just because there's a lot of people who can work for either industry, and they're competitive with both. So yeah, it's definitely a challenging marketplace for recruiters right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is also one of those things though, where like, and this was something that came up in my reporting on the 4-day work week when I did a piece about Blackbird Interactive transitioning into that, is that as you said, right now the market is favoring the people getting hired. But the thing about these benefits and like the undercurrent of this being like a reason for employees to unionize, even when things are good like this, especially when things are good like this, is that when the market changes and begins to favor companies again, then all these benefits can just go away because there are currently no protections in place for workers to say like, hey, if you take this away, we, are unhappy, or like we're not going to let you. A company like Bungie could easily just say like, okay, we're not digital first after all anymore. Everyone come move to Seattle. So just a thing to keep in mind. Let's see, what other things do I want to hit on before we take off and ride into the sunset? Let's see, anything super interesting? Speaking of Sony, just to hit it really fast, Sony invested $2 billion in Epic this week, specifically to build the metaverse and support its continued growth. Which, I mean, again, just Sony making moves. They bought Bungie. They're putting tons of money into Epic. They invested $250 million a
Right.
year or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is clearly an area. Yeah, this is clearly an area where Sony is pretty interested, and they want to be part of it, or at least to be on the ground floor in some capacity.
Yeah, so they were already an investor in Epic, and now they just increased their investment significantly. But I would say, like, context, they are still spending way less money on Bungie and Epic than Microsoft is in
Hmm.
buying Activision for nearly 69 billion,
Hmm.
$60.7 billion. So it's like still small potatoes compared to its biggest competition, but yeah, definitely significant to see. um, I think, yeah, also Tencent is another notable investor for Epic.
Yeah. Sorry. Buckman just said ride Torrent off into the sunset. Torrent is the Elden Ring horse. Um, yeah, no, if I rode that horse off into the sunset, I'd probably ride off of a cliff. Um, but yeah, in any case, this is also interesting because again, Epic, Sony, etc., clearly have designs on, in some capacity, building the metaverse or being major players in it, and then you have things like this. Teens are split on the metaverse. Most barely use VR headsets, survey shows. So key statistics here are that, let's see, a recent Gen Z research report by Piper Sandler said that 50% of teens surveyed are unsure about the metaverse or don't have any interest and don't plan to purchase a VR headset.
Hmm.
And that is pertinent because I think teens, in a lot of ways, especially if you look at culture, are drivers of how the internet evolves. If it wasn't for teens, TikTok would not be the dominant player in kind of the entire platform space at this point.
Right.
Yeah. And
Well,
so, oh, go ahead.
Well, this is also interesting, right? Because, okay, so companies are trying to market towards teens,
Hmm.
Gen Z in the future, hoping that, like, when they become, when they earn more income,
Hmm.
they will like stick with the brands they know when
Hmm.
they were teens, and they will just continue to funnel money into those. But at the same time, like the people who are like most hyped up about the metaverse, it's like Wall Street, stock market, like investors, and they're not at all teens, and they're
Wait,
just
I have a picture of the people who are hyped about the metaverse. It's these people.
Okay.
They look
Yeah.
really cool, by the way. I love I would love to hang out with these
Yeah.
creepy mannequin people.
So I feel like the demographic for the metaverse might even be like, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds.
I think it's
And
exclusively 80 and 90-year-olds. I think they're gonna have a great time with the metaverse.
yeah. So I mean, it's just like, when you see companies investing in Gen Z and whatever, like a Gen Z advertisement, that's like a bet that will maybe pay off in a decade or so. But
Yeah.
like for now, the teens now not being interested in the metaverse
Mhm.
isn't really like going to stop that massive investment in the blockchain and NFTs. I
Mhm.
think that would like maybe like in 10 years you might see like Gen Z or like the next generation
Mhm.
has shifted their views on the metaverse.
I
So that
mean,
would be notable.
what, Gen Alpha?
Oh, I don't know. I've lost track of how we're gonna call them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then a key bit from this, because I always like to know this information. This was a pretty big survey, 7,000 teens from 44 states.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean that's like because you see an important thing to always keep in mind when you're reading surveys online is that journalists are often very bad at reporting on research, and you can say something is a study or research and only survey like
Can,
80 people or something,
can I
and that's
just
that's garbage.
Can I just say that we don't do that here at WaPo?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
I
no, we
know
don't.
we spent this entire stream like complimenting ourselves, but just to add another one, we have like data analyst people who are like, will stop us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten like an email saying like, you cannot use this survey. Like, this is not good enough data. We need
Mm-hmm.
this to be like U.S. census level data. Like, this is supposed to be representative of the entire population, and
Right.
then it has to have like at least over 3,000 people and like be the right demographics and
Mm-hmm.
just like representative. You can't have like
Yeah.
what you're saying, like an 80-person survey.
Right. Yeah. This is just a basic. This is a really good like media literacy thing, though, I think, and something worth talking about here briefly to our wonderful audience is basically like it's not just on journalists to parse this kind of thing. Unfortunately, in this day and age, there's tons of like bunk or suspicious data floating around, and so like an easy way to handle a survey is look at this, like look at specifically how many people were surveyed, and then like if you can find out like what were the questions they were asked, these sorts of things, because also an important thing in terms of data collection to always keep in mind is that surveys can be pretty weak. Surveys in general, like, people tend to misreport on surveys. If the questions are hard, they might view themselves in a more favorable light than is true. They might say how they're feeling at the time as opposed to how they're feeling in some totality. They can be influenced by a million different things. So like when you see survey says this like overwhelming claim, often it's like, it's worth being skeptical of. So
Yeah, definitely check the methodology if you can. If they don't even like reveal that, that's also a red flag.
oh, that's a huge red flag. If they don't
And
reveal their methodology, then that's a bunk survey. Just skip
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, there are some really famous surveys in our industry, in the games industry, that never reveal their methodology, so we never
Mhm.
use them. But yeah, like there was one survey, I think, right when the PS5 and Xbox Series X were launching, that I like was able to use. It was pretty good, but like in terms of like they asked Xbox players like, oh, like what game are you looking forward to play on Xbox. The options did not include Halo Infinite. It did not include any game that wasn't on at the Xbox at the time. So like all gamers were like, okay, well, 60, like most of them were like, we want to play Fortnite. And that was
Mhm.
like that was the top answer. And so I put that like in on Twitter and like in an article, and people were like, what? Like it just like showed like, okay, there's like no Xbox exclusive that we're looking forward to. There's almost
Mhm.
nothing that we're looking forward to. We can play Fortnite on PC or anywhere else, but we're gonna play it on the Series X. So it looked really bad for Xbox in that one
Mhm.
particular instance. But like the methodology of the survey was that there is no option for players to say I want to play Halo Infinite or something like
Right.
that,
Which
because
is
it wasn't
bizarre.
even an answer. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's very strange, but I mean, who knows how they managed to come up with that one. Let's see. Going into the silly stuff portion of the stream, my favorite forever and for always. Let's see. So first up, uh, the founder of Gearbox, CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, bought Hollywood's Magic Castle.
what?
So the Magic Castle, for those who are not informed, and the only reason I know what the Magic Castle is because of Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford, who has talked about it for years. It is an attraction in Los Angeles that I've since been to, where basically it's just like a place about magic tricks. Like you can go there for an evening, and they have like all these different magic acts in different rooms, and it's all like it's a castle, so it's themed in all of these fun ways with all sorts of different like decorations and accoutrements. Anyway, in addition to being a video game CEO, Randy Pitchford is also super into magic tricks. That was like the thing he did before he founded Gearbox. And he's always been like, yeah, the reason that I got into entertainment in the first place in any capacity is because of magic. And so he purchased the Magic Castle just basically to like be a steward of it, is what he says. He's like not going to do anything with it. He's just going to make sure that it continues to be operational.
Nice.
Yeah, which is neat. I mean, and like the Magic Castle's cool. If you ever in LA, go to it, check it out. It's a fun time.
Wait, he's a lifelong magician, and he's the great nephew of another magician, grand nephew
I
of the
mean,
great Cardini. What?
well, yeah. I mean, of course, he's a nephew of another magician. You only get magic powers if you inherit them through blood. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but no, this is all funny to me because Randy Pitchford is an interesting guy in general. I think that he is definitely problematic in some ways. Like, let's see if I can find this. Randy
I agree
Pitchford,
with the chat.
USB porn. Here we go.
I agree with Anthony in terms of like, yeah, this is a side quest. This is like an unimportant side quest for Randy.
I mean, it definitely is. Yeah, it's just doing side quests at this point. The classic thing he's pulling a Snoop Dogg, right? When you've completed everything else in life and you're just doing the side quests. But yeah, I mean, like, here's this from a little while back. A missed legal battle. Gearbox CEO says he left USB stick of porn at medieval times.
What?
Yeah.
Man.
So Randy Pitchford is a very interesting person. I think, if I remember correctly, there's also a time when he tried to incorporate his passion for magic into, I believe it was a presentation or a panel during PAX East one year. Let's see if I can find this. Let's see, Randy Pitchford Magic PAX. Here we go. This sure was something.
Stream 85 plus
But yeah,
channels
to
and
really
save
bring
up
it
to
full circle, here's
$500
this
a
little
year
moment
with
of
YouTube TV.
not well-remembered history. Yeah, it was during like a, sorry for the ads. It was during a presentation of Borderlands 3 in 2019. Wow. Only very...
Whoever catches it, you can keep the shirt.
Yeah.
But you're gonna help me. You're gonna help me pick 3 volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, it went for a little bit, but let's see. I want to get to the card part because I feel like this went awry.
Who allowed
Like
him to
very
do
awry.
this?
He did. This is the thing about being the CEO of an independent company, or at least at the time independent. It's since been purchased.
Put the golden ticket in the envelope that says mine, because you might.
I really want them to pan over at the audience just to see their faces.
But no, this is mine.
Yeah, right.
It's yours. This
And
one
they're
is
like,
mine.
wow.
So Todd, I'm gonna count to 3, and when I do, you're going to say the name of the envelope. Whichever envelope you name is the envelope that you will receive. 1, 2, 3.
Nothing.
Nothing. And can we agree that the choice that you made was
This
your
is like an
choice,
episode of
yours alone?
Dollface too.
And this
I
is
believe they
completely
go to
fine.
a magician's party
This is
to watch
Todd, I
the
want you to open
guy
the
who
envelope
owns
that
the
says nothing.
mansion
Look inside.
like
Make
fake
sure that
die,
inside there is a
and then
boring,
he seems to real
white,
die, and then he comes out alive at the end.
ticket that says loser. Oh, take it out. That's it. That's what's in, right. It says there's nothing else in the envelope, right? There's nothing else. Hold that ticket up for everyone can see it. Todd, I'm not saying that you're a loser, but I am sorry you did not win. Can you please take a step back?
And yeah, this is one of those things where,
What's your name?
let's see, I believe this was the magic.
What is your name?
He may have done
Goose.
multiple magic tricks during Gearbox presentations at this point. Because there's one I remember from a while back, and it might have been this one, where it just went on like forever, and people in chat were just like, when is this going to end?
That's
Why
my
is he doing this
question.
belabored magic trick?
That's my question now.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to show that this happened. So yeah, that's the owner of the Magic Castle in Los Angeles.
So it's
yep.
fitting. This is actually just like the next chapter for him. I mean,
It
it's
really
like
is.
his life has led up to this point.
Yeah, let's see. Chat, I just hope he keeps his magic at the castle and not on an E3 stream. Well, good news. Maybe it was him who made E3 disappear this year. There will not be E3.
The ultimate magic trick.
Yes. Let's see.
It has to reappear at some point.
Brent just said, I got it for food and maybe too excited over how we arrived at Randy Pitchford. Yeah, I remember seeing this live and cringing the entire time. Yep, me too. Let's see. I will never get over the insane stories of how he ruined his relationship with the original Claptrap voice actor, or the USB with porn on it, plus massive company secrets at medieval times. Wow, he bought all of Magic. Yeah, he did it. He owns Magic now. Yeah, no, Randy Pitchford, again, problematic person. I know some people who work for him who say that he's broadly nice to work for, but definitely a lot a difficult person in some cases. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. I picked this one entirely for the headlines. It's going to take me 2 seconds. Fortnite Coachella is coming, but with none of the sunburn or drugs. To which I reply, then what is the point? Moving on. So for our final story of the week, the most important one, mainly because it got me a viral tweet. It's wild how well this tweet did. I don't understand why people liked this so much. But anyway, something that can only happen in video games, in my opinion, is this magnificent thing. Elden Ring speedrunner kills toughest bosses with only his, I can't say that word on the stream because we are a product of the Washington Post.
Really? I mean, that's just type of donkey.
Oh, that's true. With only his donkey. But yeah, I mean, this is already just a beautiful montage, but I mean, look at this. This is impressive for a number of reasons, in part because Elden Ring is not an easy game, and figuring out a build that works for this, I would never have been able to do it. But yeah, let's see. Prolific Soulsborne speedrunner Distortion 2 has been running out of ways to smash From Software's latest hit. Just yesterday, he managed to beat the game using every trick and exploit at his disposal in less than 10 minutes. So now he figured out how to do it using only his butt. Let's see. How did he do this is what I'm curious about.
He did a ground pound that made him, yeah, it's like just ground pounding them.
But I mean, what is his build? Did he let's see, equipped with a shield, spear, and lots of pre-fight buffs. There we go. Distortion butt pounded Margit, Godric, Renala, yep, and others into submission. Let's see. While the ground slam deals good damage as a huge windup and can't capitalize on most openings. Our butt is about to get a big upgrade, he says halfway through the video. After defeating the Erd Tree Avatar near the Great Waterfall Crest, he gets the Staff of the Avatar, which grants the weapon skill Erd Tree Slam. There we go. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's a specific slam move. Show him how magnificently girthy your cheeks are. Oh man. Yeah, so this is just fantastic. Let's watch a little bit of it. One thing that I do want to say is that like the top response to my tweet about it, that in hindsight makes sense, is everyone was like, actually, there is a movie like this, and it's Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I guess that lives up to. I mean, that lives up to your tweet and this video.
Yeah. Well, because like the thing that I thought about while watching Everything Everywhere All at Once is that it was just it's a movie about speed running. Because like speed running when you're using exploits is all of this stuff of like do this incredibly strange thing and your character will like be teleported fucking or like 20 miles forward or something out of nowhere, like go through all the walls, go behind the architecture of the level, whatever, all because you did this thing the developers never intended you to do. Similarly, that was Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? Is like exploiting the fabric of reality by doing the least likely thing possible in any situation.
That sounds like a take you should write.
You know what? Maybe. Yeah, I'll think about it. I have a couple takes. Maybe next week I'll just do takes. So I'll do that take, and then I'll do another take I have about how I'm really enjoying Weird West, but also I've hit the heartbreaking point where I think I'm ready to just be done with it.
You're revealing
anyway.
too many secrets on the stream. Now other people are going to hear this and read the tape before you.
No, I'll do it faster. I've already actually, in the time that it took me to say I'm going to do that take, I already wrote it. It's done.
Great.
I did it with my feet. I have another keyboard on the ground. Yeah. Just jammed it out.
Hot dog fingers? Okay.
Yep. Hot dog feet, actually.
That just seems difficult. I don't know how you're going to work with that.
I mean, if I had hot dog feet too, how do I play piano?
You can get like your cat to do it.
Oh, true. Biscuit just does everything for me at this point. I should pay her better.
Nice.
Let's see.
Okay, can you figure out how to use the kick button? Honestly, I still have to figure that out.
Oh, the kick is great. Every game that has a kick is great. Like this is an unqualified truth. If you can kick things off of ledges in a video game, it's a perfect video game.
Yeah.
Let's see. Elden Ring coverage needs to close off with a compilation of wild takes without letting people process each one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we got close to that yesterday because we had like the New York Times one, another CNET one that had like a bad headline but was a pretty good take, and then also like one on Coinbase, which is a Bitcoin website, that was like the Dark Souls series, ultimately persisted without compromising its vision, and so will Bitcoin.
Wait, what? Oh no,
Yep.
I did not see that one.
Oh yeah, it's a real article. You can look it
Okay,
up.
I think you have to end the stream here now.
Yeah, I know. It's getting too cursed. Foot keyboard cam win. Yeah, now it's getting way too cursed.
Oh no. Well,
to answer
you
your
have
question,
to
hopefully
deliver.
never, but maybe next week.
The people have asked, the people have requested, now you have to deliver. That's all.
Well, I feel bad for the people. In any case, thank you everybody for tuning in. Been Nathan Grayson, joined by Shannon Liao. We do this. I mean, ideally, we do this every Thursday at 4 p.m. ET. Again, we had to take a few weeks off because of GDC and then getting COVID. Things you cannot really control for. But we're back. We'll be back next week and for the foreseeable future.
I just wanted to add that we're also gonna do like more we have some really cool interviews. I can't wait to show off, and also I think there's another gameplay stream tomorrow, and then next Monday I'm also gonna be on kind of funny videos, just doing the same thing that we're doing here, but over there, and then hopefully get someone and kind of collaborate with them, and we might get more of that in another live stream from Watch Memphis too. So
yeah, so a lot of cool stuff coming up. And so stay tuned. In the meantime, thanks everybody, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.